Welcome to Verde's Folding Chair, a bi-weekly podcast about making space at the table for Black, women, and independent writers. Verde's Folding Chair is about making space for our voices, existence, and lived experiences. Zora Neale Hurston said, "If you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it." This podcast is the opposite of being silent. Come on and bring your folding chairs and pull up at the table. I promise to make space for you, Rainbow Peeps and Friends. Hey, Rainbow Peeps and Friends. Before we jump into our first episode, I have to make a couple of corrections from my last podcast episode. You see, there are going to be a lot of mistakes on this here journey to becoming. And when I make them, and I realized I've made them, I will self-correct. What I'm not going to do, though, is quit. Speaking of quitting, I'm also not going to quit talking about Brittney Griner. BG! Not until President Biden and his team brings her back home safely. On that note, in the last episode, I mispronounced Representative Allred's name when I was discussing the work he and other representatives are doing to bring BG home safely. His name is Representative Colin Allred of Texas, and I want to be clear on that. I've had my name mispronounced all my life, and I absolutely do not like to do that to other people. Names are important, names are powerful, and names have meaning. So I just wanted to make that clear. I also said that the WNBA needs to exponentially increase their activism and draw more attention to BG's situation, being more vocal about what is going on. But I meant to say the NBA needs to exponentially increase their activism and draw more attention to BG's situation. But really, both organizations can be more outwardly vocal. And when I say the WNBA's organization, I mean the organization, not its players, because in the WNBA, the women players are doing all that they can, I think, in order to draw attention to BG's situation and try to bring her home. A lot of players are. Let me just say that. A lot of players are. But when it comes to the organization, both organizations, not the players in the WNBA, I just want to make that clear. The NBA has resources to do so, and they can increase their activism on using their platform to draw attention to Brittney Griner so that her name stays in our mouths and that we're calling the White House. We're writing letters to our representatives, and we are keeping her lifted up. The NBA and the WNBA, they promote our Black bodies all the time when it comes to their financial benefit. Now we need them to promote Brittney Griner's Black body for her benefit so that she can come home quickly and safely. Today's episode and every episode begins with the Black woman. The most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. Malcolm X. Black women. My first segment of the show is dedicated to Black women. Black women are a reflection of God. Black women are beautiful. Black women are talented. Black women are creative. Black women are determined. Black women are powerful and dangerous. Black women deserve better. Today, I want to talk about two exceptional Black women. These women exemplify longevity within their careers. They're also talented and inspiring. Another adjective that may describe them would be controversial. I'm speaking of none other than the multiple NAACP Image Award winning Jada Pinkett Smith, and the Oscar award winning, BAFTA award winner, Golden Globe award winner, and Grammy award winner, Monique. And I think people need to recognize and put some respect on their names. Let me begin by saying, quote, the person who is without sin, please cast the first stone, end quote, or just stop. I wanted to talk about Monique and Jada because lately they both have been dragged all over social media, all in the interviews by very opinionated people, and dragged within the Black community. Another reason I want to talk about both Monique and Jada is because, well, neither of them are completely innocent and may even deserve some of the criticism they've received. I said some. I absolutely loved Jada Pinkett Smith growing up. I think I had a crush on her from the first time excuse me, from the first time I was introduced to her character, Lena James, on A Different World. I have admired her in the character she has played in movies, from The Inkwell to Menace to Society, A Low Down Dirty Shame, Set It Off, and my all-time favorite, Jason's Lyric. If you know, you know. I must have watched that movie like a gazillion times as a teenager. She is beautiful, and along with her around the way personality and seemingly strong confidence in who she is as a person, is what initially drew me to her. Monique, on the other hand, has always been fucking hilarious. One of my favorite jokes of hers is when she talks about how white women don't send their men to work angry because they want them to go get that money. She like, right before they walk out the door after an argument, his wife is like, "Hey, all those things I said." My wife and I use this line all the time when we're joking around with each other. Anyway, I can't lie and say I got into the Parkers much as a kid, though. I thought it was pretty corny, but I did watch it, because there just wasn't that many black shows on TV. In hindsight, looking back on it, it was groundbreaking in that there were two black women characters, leading characters, who are dark skinned and big. And they were breaking the mold of what the natural aesthetic of what is acceptable on TV is. I hated that they made her thirsty for a guy who didn't want her, though. That was certainly a overplayed trope on the heavyset black woman. Still, the show has maintained longevity as it is currently being played in reruns on TV. So these two women have been working in show business for at least 3 decades, yet they are treated like they don't have credit in these streets. At least that's how it looks to me. Let's start with some of their issues in the news. Let's start with Jada. Jada's most recently in the news due to her quote unquote entanglement with musician August Alsina. To be clear, by entanglement, I mean she had an extramarital affair with Alsina. Okay. Jada and Will both agree they were separated at the time of the affair. They weren't in a good place, and neither was their marriage. However, August is the friend of Jada and Will's middle child. So Jada had an affair with her son's friend. Not great, right? Got it. Also, it appears she was mentoring or helping the young Alcina when the affair began. Also, not great, right? August and Jada, of course, didn't last. And as a result of having a broken heart, August told the world about his affair with Jada. So now Jada's business, her personal life, her sexual business is in the public eye. No one cares about that, though. She's a woman who had an affair outside of her marriage with her quote unquote good man who she doesn't love, and she deserves to be stoned, right? All right. So fast forward to the Oscars 2022 when Will goes on stage and slaps Chris Rock. Everybody blames Jada for that. She looked at him and silently told him to go slap Rock. Well, that's the consensus I've received from my Google searches, YouTube, and conversations with people about it. So Jada once again got dragged because she forced her man to go on stage and embarrass himself. She doesn't love him because she made him do that. Monique. Monique's issues stem way back in 2009 when she starred in a movie called Precious. In 2010, she was nominated and won an Academy Award for Best Actress in this movie. Monique has stated that she was paid $50,000 for this film because Precious was a small independent film. However, after the project received rave reviews at the Sundance Film Festival, Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey signed on as executive producers, which gave the movie a significant boost. So, Monique was then expected to travel to promote the movie, but she was not contractually obligated, nor was she paid additional money to do so. So, Monique refused. She shared she didn't want to sacrifice family time for festivals and press junkets because she wasn't being compensated to do it. Monique says, quote, oftentimes, when it comes to a Black woman speaking up and speaking out, it goes unheard until she dies. Then, once she dies, then we go back and say, well, she was right. And let's make a movie about it, she explained. See, I can give you names. Eartha Kitt. I can give you names. Hazel Scott. I can give you their names. Fannie Lou Hamer. I can give you their names. Hattie McDaniel. All of those women took a stand, and all of those women left here heartbroken, unhealthy, looking at a community saying, y'all know I'm right, but why won't anybody say anything? End quote. During this disagreement between Perry, Winfrey, and Daniels, Monique has been outraged and has shared her anger and frustration in interviews and during her comedy shows on stage. And she hasn't used flowery or fun loving language to express being, as she called it, quote unquote, whiteballed from the industry by these power players. Although the movie went on to gross $63.6 million, Monique earned $50,000. I might have used less than flowery or fun loving words to express my frustrations at this point. What about you? Fast forward to February 2012. Perry calls Monique and tells her he is going to figure out a way to get her whatever money is coming from Precious and give it to her. Monique did record this phone call and she shares it publicly. Okay. And I don't think Tyler Perry knew about that. In April of 2022, Daniel joins Monique on stage and apologized for, quote, hurting you in the way I did, end quote. He also goes on to talk about how Monique was his best friend and the performance they did with Precious was God working through them. And he promises to use her in an upcoming film. I'm sorry. Then in May of 2022, Monique finds herself in controversy again, this time with the comedian D.L. Hughley over a contractual agreement where Monique understood her contract to state that she was to close the event. Instead, she claims Hughley refused to go on stage, and then Monique goes on stage and airs her grievances to the audience again in less than flowery words. Got it? All right. Monique's like, first of all, I'm an Oscar winning bad bitch. I am not closing for you. Anyway, so let's talk about their flaws. Was Jada Pinkett Smith right in having an affair with her son's friend who was in their home seeking healing and looking to Jada for guidance? No. Could Monique have taken a higher road in expressing the frustration she has felt over the last decade plus for being treated like a second class citizen within an industry where she has received the highest award and honor? Yes. Still, I ask, where is the grace for Black women? Where is our room to make mistakes without being dragged into oblivion? I have read some of the most horrible things said about both of these women. People have gone so far as to say that Jada Pinkett Smith, after more than 25 years of marriage, doesn't even love Will Smith and is married to him simply because she's settled. She really wanted to marry Tupac. And of course, people have told Monique to shut the hell up. Why can't we look at Jada like we so often look at men? She made a terrible mistake. Well, when a woman is vulnerable, it'll lead her to do some crazy things. It's Will's fault. He shouldn't have left her. He must have wanted her to cheat. All they need is a little time and healing. They need to stay together. We'll need to find a way to make it work. Isn't this what is often said to women? What is expected of black women? Isn't it more acceptable for black women to get cheated on by men and then the woman stays in the relationship? Here we see the reverse happens, where the husband decides to stay, and we are struggling to accept that black women get weak too. Black women make mistakes too. Black women cheat too. Black women lie too. Black women say things they shouldn't say too. And black women need forgiveness and grace too. I'm not saying that all black women, no, let's not go there. But this does happen, right? I must say that I do not support Monique bringing D.L. Hughley's daughter into their disagreement. Bringing up her sexual trauma, talking about his wife and all of that, I just don't agree with it. And I think it's wrong and misplaced anger. But it doesn't stop me from seeing a woman who is scarred and tired of being run over and treated like she's not a motherfucking Oscar winning actress. Monique shouldn't shut up because we all know what happens when you shut up and take the abuse, right? They kill you and say you loved every minute of it. However, I do think she should consider having talking points so she can stick to the facts. Because at the end of the day, when you argue with fools, people from a distance can't tell who is who. Black women are human too. Magical and all, we are still human and we have flaws. And our flaws shouldn't banish us from existence. Banish us to the quiet corner where we must forever shut up now because people have a reason why we should shut up. No. You see, I thought I was going to read the comments left from people on these articles and social media posts about these two women, which is what made me want to do a segment on them in the first place. I decided not to. You can go read them for yourselves if you want to. You can see the vitriol spewed at these black women from all types of people. It's the same vitriol I'm reading every day about what people are saying about Brittany Griner. And I just want to debunk the myth that we have to be perfect in order to be treated right, in order to be protected. We don't. Black women deserve grace, too. My next segment is readings and ruminations, my ever-growing TBR list, and what I'm reading. I just finished reading Brittany Griner's story published in 2014 called In My Skin. This book has been on my TBR list since its release. Too bad it took me so long to read it. But I definitely enjoy reading it and getting to know a little bit more about BG as a person and learning about her story. I think with athletes and celebrities, we become so accustomed to being detached from their humanity and we forget that they are actual people. And like all of us, they too have a story. They're not just what we see before us. One of the things that stood out to me in Griner's book was her journey to becoming. Shout out to our forever First Lady. Griner had to overcome being constantly bullied and harassed growing up at school by her peers, being rejected at home by her father for being who she is, and struggling to find a place in her young world, in a world that just didn't accept her. How many of us can relate to that, either in part or in full? Even in college, where most of us began to find our freedom and independence, Griner was shackled from being allowed to fully embrace that experience. She was forced to pledge her allegiance to Baylor's image and likeness solely. a school that has an anti LGBTQ policy, a policy she wasn't aware of when she committed to Baylor, nor did anyone in the women's basketball program care to share that with her. Very hypocritical indeed. Nope, they wanted her to come and play for them. She was heavily scouted in high school, and she could have chosen a number of top programs. The part of Baylor's anti-LGBTQ policy reads, quote, "The university affirms the biblical understanding of sexuality as a gift from God. Christian churches across the ages and around the world have affirmed purity and singleness and fidelity in marriage between a man and a woman as the biblical norm. Temptations to deviate from this norm include both heterosexual sex outside of marriage and homosexual behavior." End quote. Here she is bringing attention and prominence to the school and to the women's basketball program while internally being forced to hide in the shadows, to pretend and deny her whole self because she is gay. Baylor wanted her field goal percentages and shot blocking abilities, but didn't actually want her. Athletes, especially women athletes, have far too long been told to shut up and play. It's one of the reasons LeBron James launched a More Than an Athlete brand through Uninterrupted. The website states it is a brand that, quote, empowers athletes to be, quote unquote, more than by telling their authentic stories without interruption, end quote. In Griner's book, In My Skin, Griner also shares the love and acceptance she received from her mom and siblings and how their support provided her with a comfort and a safe place and a reminder that it was okay to be who she was. Griner ultimately found her circle of friends at Baylor who accepted her and loved her, which helped her get through playing for a school that clearly did not. Being drafted number one to the Phoenix Mercury freed BG from the stifles of Baylor's policy, from being what others demanded her to be, and finally embracing all of herself openly and unapologetically. Of course, I highly recommend reading In My Skin, My Life on and Off the Basketball Court by Brittany Griner with Sue Hovey, because it's BG's story in her own words. With all of the misinformation and assumptions about who she is right now, I'm glad her words and her story are out there for us. What I'm currently reading now is Say Jesus and Come to Me by Anne Allen Shockley. You've heard me mention Anne Allen Shockley's name, and I promised you I will have a segment on her. And trust me, I will. What I'm finding most interesting about Anne Allen Shockley is that she isn't as well known as she should be. Not surprising since she's Black and a woman. During her earlier years, she was also a researcher, librarian, writer of queer fiction stories, and a host of nonfiction pieces. She's also a graduate of my alma mater, Fisk University, where she went on to work in the library's historical special collections. Did I mention she is a Black woman who wrote queer fiction stories during the late 70s and early 80s? As you can tell, I'm extremely excited about Shockley. Okay. But back to what I'm reading. So, like I said, I'm reading Say Jesus and Come to Me. Doesn't that just make you want to pick up the book and read it? That name is awesome. I'm early in this novel about Myrtle Black, a woman who is a traveling Christian evangelist, preaching the gospel in the daytime and luring women from the pulpit by her sheer power and grace to her bedroom in the nighttime. Ooh, child. That's all I know for now, but I'll keep you posted. On becoming a writer, a woman, a better human being. My original thought before I published Rainbow separately was to publish a collection of short stories. However, once I found my editor, she gave me the idea to make them into individual novellas as a way to build myself, as to build my brand as an author by releasing these short stories over a shorter period of time. I absolutely love the idea and I was all for it. But there's just so many details that go into being an independent writer that it just hasn't worked out that way. And actually, now that I'm a more seasoned and knowledgeable writer and publisher, it wasn't ever going to be a good idea for me. Independent means just that. I am independently investing in my brand myself. There's no big or small, for that matter, publishing house paying for my advertisement, my reviews, or any writing contests. That's all me. So each book requires a certain amount of funds to release properly, right? I don't blame her or anyone for getting all of my stories edited at once. This is just a lesson learned along the way of becoming. A lesson I'm grateful to have had. For one, I'm more aware of the complexities of editing and how I really need my editor to be like right alongside me as I go through the process of publishing each book. I don't currently have that, and therefore I need a new editor. Lesson learned. The idea to publish these stories separately is one I still like because I have time to make them the best stories they can possibly be through my years of growth. Um, what I have since learned from classes and writing groups and books on writing is that these already edited stories need more work. There's more to flesh out with the characters, the plot, setting, themes, etc. And once I add more to the story, I'll need to pay to have them edited again. Editors aren't cheap, okay? Nor should they be. I mean, they shouldn't be outrageously expensive, but editing is the difference between your book being exceptional and just meh. So keep that in mind. For me, since I pay for everything, multiple rounds of the same editing job just isn't realistic financially. For example, I can't pay twice for a developmental editor or a copy editor, you see. Independent writers, what are your experiences when it comes to editors? What has been your experience as it relates to your editing, to editing your work on your journey to becoming an independent writer? Please share. All right, so my next segment is Rainbow's Corner. It's where I read my works, I discuss themes, the characters, plot, etc. from my books, stories, and works in progress. So after reading Brittany Griner's story in my skin, it naturally made me think of my first published novella, Rainbow. Rainbow is a black queer novella about an aspiring basketball player who is learning and growing and fighting to accept herself, to find confidence in who she is, and to live fully in the truth of who she is without the cloak and weight of other people's thoughts. Although the main character in Rainbow is completely different from Brittany Griner, their stories have a lot of similarities. Um, Mainly that at particular times in their lives, in Melanie's life and in Brittany Griner's life, they are both fighting to be and feel accepted. They both have to learn to live their lives for themselves and forget what other people think, especially their parents, who can have, parents can have stronghold over the choices that their children make, even if it goes against their child's entire being. And most importantly, they both were on life's journeys to accepting themselves, which we all are at some point or another in our lives. Which is why, although Rainbow is a black queer story, it is truly universal. BG's book made me proud that I fought so hard to get Rainbow out into the world. And although I knew it, it solidified why it needs to be in the world and why more stories like it need to be written. I was just talking to this cisgendered hetero white male at the bar the other day. We were discussing a number of things, so I don't know how we really got on the topic, but he said he thought kids today had it so much easier than he did growing up. He basically said today kids can be gay and all of that. Okay. And I corrected him by saying that although there's more exposure and discussions of acceptance, kids today are bullied for being themselves probably even more than they were during his time. He seemed to be somewhere in his what, mid to late 50s or somewhere about that. And then I pointed to my cell phone and I said, because of this, it never goes off. It's always in their hands. Kids are killing themselves for being queer. I think two things are true. For LGBTQ plus people, we eventually find our circles and we find our circles where we hang out. We find our strengths and our voices and we move around in our bubbles, forgetting the journey it took to get there. And oftentimes there's a journey. Not always, but oftentimes, right? And we're comfortable and privileged in our spaces, and we forget there are people out there who aren't as exposed for whatever reasons, who haven't found their space, who are fighting, who are feeling like something is wrong with them, who are still being suffocated. We don't see them because we are comfortable and things are way better than they were 5, 10, 15, or even 20 years ago or so, right? The next thing, number two, there are people in the hetero world, in hetero spaces, like the man at the bar the other day. These are the straight people who see the occasional rainbow flag, a queer couple on TV or in the movies, and they say, see, they are accepted. They're everywhere. It's equal now. It's not even a big deal. And they don't really see the homophobia in the world because it's not, nor has it ever been their lived experiences. So, coming out stories like Rainbow and Brittany Griner's are still needed for those who are coming behind us, who are still oppressed by religion, family, and in some places, cultures that would rather kill them than have them live as free, loving human beings. As if the school year wasn't rough enough for me, I had one of my students first vandalize an LGBTQ plus flag hanging in my classroom because my classroom is a safe space and I wanted to be really loud about that this year. To be quite honest, it's only been about 3 years since I felt comfortable enough talking to my students about my wife. Like my hetero colleagues are talking about their spouses. Nothing too personal, so don't go there. I'd go to my colleagues' classrooms and they'll have pictures of their families and spouses, no problem. But when I arrived at the school back in 2014, it wasn't the case for me. When my students would ask me about my weekend or what I was doing, I would say I was with my friend. If they asked me if I was married, I would simply just say yes. I longed for the freedom and comfort that my colleagues had, but I was afraid. I feared backlash. It's only been a few years since my school district has been open and firm in pushing their support for LGBTQ plus students, families, and employees. This is just the truth. So after this student vandalized the flag in my class, he went on to steal it. Once I sent an email out about it, two of my colleagues gave me flags to replace it. I hung up the second flag. He stole that one. I stapled the third flag above the board where I thought it was much safer. And guess what? He stole that one too. So at this point, my very supportive admin team took action to help support me. Unfortunately, this student couldn't be moved from my class for legal reasons. So one day I'm teaching, and this kid just yells out, faggot. Okay. just yells it out in front of the class. I stay calm. Um, in his written report, he said he was talking about me because I was quote unquote LGBTQ, and the flags I had hanging up confused kids because of course I hung up another flag. Hate will never win in my classroom. But I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken that this kid is what, 12, 13, and I'm witnessing another generation of hate right before my eyes. And I know where it's coming from. I'm heartbroken because I've never been attacked by one of my students in that kind of way before. I'm heartbroken for my student. Okay. I still witness, I'm still a witness to kids teasing and harassing each other for, quote, doing gay stuff, end quote, or, quote, acting gay, end quote. I'm still a witness to kids using the word gay in a derogatory way. For example, quote, that's gay, end quote, to show disapproval of something or someone. So, yes, we have a long, long way to go. And Rainbow isn't an outdated story. And add it to your reading list, okay? Request it to be added to your local library. And since it's a coming of age story, request it to be added to your neighborhood's school's library as well. My next segment, Black Local Independent. You can be one, two, or even all three of these things, but you can't be none. Today, I want to show some love to the only Black and independently owned bookstore in Sacramento, California. Underground Books. Underground Books is located in the historically Black community of Oak Park. Years ago, I used to work at a small non-public school called New Dimensions Learning Academy, which was right across the street from Underground Books. This was years before the white folks showed up in the area trying to buy up all the property, push all the generations of people who've been living there for years out, and walk around like they own the place. You know, with that look they give you like, what are you doing here? Is it just me? Anyway, I used to go to the bookstore often and on occasion take the students into the store to work and hang out. Mother Rose was and continue to be a friendly, welcoming face, and I absolutely enjoy visiting the store and stacking up on books and other trinkets. Also, before COVID, Black Women Tell Tales, a Black women's writing group that I'm a part of, met in the bookstore monthly. So I have very fond memories in this space. The website states Underground Books opened in the summer of 2003 and is the literary hub of Oak Park. Since the closing of the only Black library in Oak Park in the 1970s, it became the mission of St. Hope founder Kevin Johnson to ensure that the students and the community had access to books. As part of the larger 40 Acres Cultural Center, Underground Books is a nonprofit under St. Hope and has become a gathering place for neighborhood residents. Underground Books hosts book signings by local and national authors, lectures, poetry events, children's story time, radio shows, and much more. Managed and operated by Georgia Mother Rose West, the bookstore has proudly become a well known pillar in the Oak Park community. It is a landmark treasure to the Oak Park community. So if you're looking for a place to buy your books, please check out Underground Books. Rainbow Peeps and Friends, it is time for me to share my positive thought for this episode. Today's positive thought is related to and is in response to the constant and ongoing attack on women in our bodies. Quote, as Black women, our fight has always been and continues to be about the human right to control our body, our work, and our community. End quote. Marcella Howe. Attacks on our human rights will always be met with protest and activism. We will not stop until reproductive justice is the law of the land. Marcella Howe. Controlling our bodies is a basic human right, period. Thanks for joining me this week on Verde's Folding Chair. You can also join me on IG at _writer_Verde_Arzu, on Twitter at Verde_Arzu, and or Facebook at the writer Verde Arzu. You can also find a copy of my book, Rainbow, a Black queer novella, and other rainbow merch on my website, www.verdearzu.com. I also have a new blog on that website called All Hail the Queen. If you've liked what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you, Rainbow Peeps and Friends. And remember, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Thanks for listening. Peace, love, and rainbow.